Very good morning, everybody. My name is Joey. On Twitter, I'm at Baseball Brit. I love baseball. But today, I'm randomly trying to choose a college football team to support because I saw a game between Notre Dame and Louisville, and it seemed super fun, and everyone was well into it. And I want to learn more about American culture. Having a team is going to help me focus my learning on a specific group of players and a coach and an area and a league or a division, whatever you call it. So what I've done, I've written down all 130 teams. You can see it goes down to UMass. Sorry to them that they're 130th. It goes up to a team called Alabama at the top. I've used Athlon Sports in order to select and copy and paste those 130 teams. Here's the wheel. We're going to spin it now. Whichever team gets selected, that is my forever team. I'll be watching all their games, hopefully getting some of their kit for Christmas, and just loving on them every single day. I am a Tulane fan for the rest of my life. Let's go Tulane. I'm going to find out where you are.
We are back with another episode of Quarantined Coaches. This time we are in New Orleans with Coach Uhlman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing as well as possible here, locked up in the friendly confines. So just trying to do our part to limit, contact with the outside world and just, do what's being asked of us as a community. So, but all's well.
That is good to hear. Before we get started, there is a special friend and a special fan to the Tulane community that I think everybody is well aware of. So we have a question that came in from him for you, okay? So let me bring it up for you.
Hello there, Coach. I read that 21 of your players that you've coached have gone on to play in the show. I was wondering, except for innate ability and a high work ethic, what other attributes did these 21 players share to help them make it to the top level? Hope you're staying safe. Cheers. Roll wave.
Baseball, Brett, across the pond, baby. Good to hear from you. We sure miss you. Wish you were here in New Orleans partaking of the festivities that is Tulane Baseball. Appreciate the question. It's a tough question, but I think as I thought about it more, I think the answer to it lies within their high standards for themselves. I think they're all passionate. They all work hard, all the kind of easy ways to kind of say how good somebody is or why they made it to a certain level. I just think as I reflected on all those players, their standard of play and their expectations of themselves and how they prepared and how they lifted, how they ate, how they conducted themselves, and then just their performances in general, I think really is what set those guys ultimately apart. So I would just say they're high standard for themselves.
So what is it like coaching at Tulane or being a student athlete at Tulane where, you're in New Orleans? That's kind of an interesting place to go to college.
Yeah, it's, when I first was approached by Coach Jewett for the opportunity to come down to New Orleans, I had never been here before. Certainly in the baseball community for as long as I've been, well aware of Tulane's baseball history and their Omaha pedigree and the quality of education that student athletes receive here at Tulane. So really, selling the program's pretty easy. It's a four-pronged kind of approach. It's destination city, certainly New Orleans. It's a world-class education. It's a Omaha pedigree program, which I stated earlier. And then lastly, and certainly not least, why guys go to school, other than to win a national championship, is to develop. And certainly our coaching staff has a track record of development. So, those four things really kind of solidified in my mind is if I'm a student athlete, the things that I'm trying to check off in my box of why or why not certainly stood out for me. And so those things are what drew me to Tulane.
I wanted to talk some money with you guys today and learn a little bit more about that. I know it's one of the most important things, if not the top priority when it comes to searching for a school. You've been at several different levels in several different states at public and private schools. Can you talk a little bit about just how different financial aid packages look depending on where you are?
I sure can. Yeah. So I spent some time at the University of Nevada. I spent some time at Kansas, the University of Oregon, and now at Tulane. Each offer broad degrees of opportunities and things. So, for instance, at the University of Nevada, where I first started out at the Division I level, in terms of financial aid packages, I wouldn't say there were a ton when we first started. But kind of as the years progressed, there were two in particular that really kind of moved the needle a little bit for us, meaning gave us a little more ammunition to kind of compete with the big boys. You know, when you're at a mid-major school like the University of Nevada, not that you're trying to recruit a lower level player, that's not the case at all. You're trying to get the very best players you can. You're going head to head with some big boys and those kind of things. As a matter of fact, in Nevada, there were 18 former players that went on to the big leagues, and I was fortunate to coach some of those. So the quality of player was fantastic. The difference is when you're trying to compete against a logo or a league at a place like Nevada, you're probably going to have to end up paying for that pretty heavily if you want to dip your toe in that water. So as we moved along, the needle got pushed a little bit further to the better side for us. Two things: the WUI, Western Undergrad Exchange, and a thing called the Millennium Scholarship. The Millennium Scholarship was for in-state students only from the state of Nevada. Now, I would tell you that the depth of talent in the state like Nevada that has two major cities in it isn't super. So you're dealing with a lower amount of guys that you're going to have that can be productive in your program. So when you get those guys on a scholarship like the Millennium, that essentially was at the time, I don't know that it is anymore, being funded at the same levels, but at the time we were able to get that in-state kid for free. You know, and if you sprinkle in 3 or 4 in-state kids for free, you can make the assumption that that's going to free up money for you to go and pursue those big fish that you're going up against those big boys with. So at least makes you a little bit more competitive, where you can buy that Friday night starter, or at the very worst, make the big boys have to pay some money and feel a little bit of pinch and pain because they went up against you and they beat you, but they had to pay for them. So that scholarship was a good start for us. And then at kind of the trail end of my time at Nevada was WUI. And what WUI would do, it took the group of Western states and it lowered the denominator for the cost of attendance. So let's say the out-of-state, just for the sake of understanding, let's say the out-of-state tuition, full kit and caboodle, was $30,000, and you want to pay him $20,000. Well, if this kid fell under the category of WUI, which meant he was in one of those Western states, he had a 3.0 GPA or better, that's how minimum the requirements were, we could get that kid for a denominator that was between in-state and out-of-state. So let's call out-of-state 30, in-state 10, WUI was 20. So now, instead of paying that kid $20,000 to get a better number out of the 30,000, you can now, maybe it's 10,000, half of his WUI, and you're getting more bang for your buck, and so is the kid. So there were some things there that allowed us some flexibility. One guy brings to mind is a guy named Gary Brown, who Cal State Fullerton wiggled away from us, that I was paying pretty good money for. And they kind of snuck in the back door to get him, but the fact that they had to pay for him to get him, to keep him in state, signified to me a pretty significant change in kind of what we could do at Nevada. Again, I don't know how they've institutionalized that moving forward, again, money, inflation, all those kind of things, but you could kind of see where you could go into somebody's backyard, like a state of California, where premier players are, and be financially competitive with them to at least pique their interest and get them, if they knew nothing about your program, at least get them interested when you start talking about the bottom line, which is dollars. Place like the University of Oregon, again, you get the benefit of the doubt with the logo. You can pick up any phone, walk into any room, and automatically people are going to be interested because they see the O. What people probably don't understand is that the price tag to go to a school like the University of Oregon is very expensive. And there were a few options when it came to financial aid there that weren't all that significant. Let's call it maybe a 20% kind of scholarship help out of a full ride. So not significant, but when you're trying to pair that with athletic aid, which was allowable, it was the Apex and the Summit, both were GPA and SAT tied together with GPA and SAT. So you had to have, call it a 3.6 with a 25 ACT. If you met those two standards, you automatically got that money. So it was nice to be able to kind of sit in a room with somebody and walk them through, hey, here's what you're going to get. We're going to give you X amount. And if you meet this criteria, you're going to get X amount of dollars. So you could at least kind of put a package together where people could walk away from that and go, okay, I know what my bottom line is going to be at the end of the day when this thing's done. And we say yes, or we look at that package and go, man, we'd really love to go there, but we can't afford it. At least we could put something on the table that people could see and know what they were going to be dealing with. So there were a few options there. I wouldn't say anything significant. So there were some challenges in terms of the financial parts there that I don't think a lot of people understand. And then here at Tulane, a very high price tag, total cost of attendance inching into the 79,000 a year when you're talking about tuition, which it's not in-state or out-of-state. It's just straight up tuition fees, books across the board. Everybody's the same. And then you have room and board, and you have your books. So you're talking about a different kind of selling when it comes to, okay, we may be paying you 30 or 35 or 40,000, and you're still going to have to come up with $30,000 to $40,000 to come to school. Why do I need to do that? And how can we offset that? And the thing in the private institutions is you can have a system where your merit sets up, whether it be a financial deal where parents in the household make X amount of dollars and you get X amount of dollars for that. You meet a certain criteria with your grades, your testing, and your family financial situation, and that's a combined package. And now you package that up with athletic money. So you can kind of see how these auxiliary options in terms of financial aid can be put together with athletic money to sweeten the pot for the families, for the kids, and then ultimately at the end of the day for the programs to get that dollar to stretch further when you're dealing with 11.7 scholarships and 27 people to put on scholarship at a maximum. So it's a head count and an equivalency.
I mean, it's insane, and I really appreciate you sitting down and talking about it. There's nothing wrong with talking about it. It's all facts, but it's kind of like this taboo subject, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what we don't want. That's not good for the game. That's not good for kids making decisions. I think this also opens up people's eyes to, you're not just a baseball coach. I mean, hell, you're like a damn financial analyst and budgeteer here. I mean, how much studying of the rules or of the school's financial stuff, like how much time do you have to spend to understand that when you make a transition to a new school?
Not enough time. And the rule book is so thick and diverse. I think it's prudent to rely on the people that are hired in the department to help you handle those kind of things, the financial aid people, the compliance people. And I think, frankly, where people get in trouble in these kinds of situations is they're not asking their people enough of those kind of questions. If you never have a question about financial aid or compliance issues, those are red flags too. So I try to tend to lean on the side of, I don't know everything. I've been doing it a long time. But I like to lean on the people that are in the building, coaches that are in different sports, that have been there for a while, that know how to deal with those things and where to go to find the right answers and how to deal with those things. So, I think it's just one of those deals where you got to immerse yourself in figuring out the hows and the whys and how those things work. And then it's kind of just an experience thing. You just continue to have an understanding as you go through this thing of how the 11-7 works, how it shapes up down the road a year from now, how to pay Paul to be able to pay Mary later, those kind of things. You start getting really creative, and it becomes kind of a shell game, guess which shell the ball's under kind of deal. So
Right.
It's a lot of sticking and moving. It's a lot of groundwork laid with families in the recruiting process. A trust factor that really comes across is, do they feel like you're giving them the information that they need to make the best kind of decisions for their future? And if you go about doing that, and it feels like an open conversation where they can ask for help, you can ask for help, you're going to give them the tough answers to the questions that they ask. And if you don't have the answers for the questions they ask, you certainly better not make them up, because those come back to haunt you. And you better go find out where those answers are so you can give them the best answers possible so they can make the best decisions for themselves. I kind of equate it to buying a house or buying a car. You never know if it's the right house. You never know if it's the right car. You never know if it's the right person to get married. But what you do know is you have a set of things inside of you that are your instincts. You have certain ways you can look at things. You can research online. You can ask your friends. You can ask coaches. You can ask players that have played in the program. And you're building this case as to why I'm feeling the way I feel about this program. And at the end of the day, if all those things line up, you take the leap with your instincts. If your instincts say this person is trustworthy and I believe he has the best intentions for my kid and this family, it doesn't make it perfect, and everybody screws up, and we've all done things that we regret. But I think at the end of the day, when you operate from that pulpit, I think you give yourself the best chance to have people want to work for you and with you, so that when you do get in a bind, like we are going to see here in the next coming years with all this fallout of how this virus has really put a wrench in a lot of things, I think you're going to see the folks that have engendered goodwill amongst their recruits and their families are going to have a better time being able to kind of stick and move when it comes to moving some money and getting creative with things that you need to get creative with.
And it's just, I mean, there's so many questions to go from here, right? So
Yep.
I'm trying to stay organized with you on this.
Yep.
One of the things I thought about when you were talking is, if I'm a parent, okay, and Tulane is out there and they take a look at my son and they express some interest in my son, it doesn't mean that you like him, you want him to go to school there.
Yeah.
But maybe you want to start the recruiting process.
Yeah.
My first question as a parent is, how much is this going to cost me? Otherwise, we're wasting everybody's time.
I feel the same way.
But yet at the same time, how can I approach that as the first question I ask you?
Yep.
You call me, you don't even know if you like me yet.
Yep.
But my real first question, what I really want to ask is, how much is this going to cost me if you do like me?
That's the bottom line, isn't it? I mean, and it's funny that you say that, because at the end of, my conversations with families, and I lay out what it's going to cost them. I always come back to, I grew up a Dodger fan. I wanted the Dodgers. I wanted to play for the Dodgers. I want to be a big leaguer. Well, they never drafted me, so I never got the opportunity. So you can want something very badly, but if it doesn't match up with the financial aspects, A, or B, the personalities or what you see when you go to the city or the school, it doesn't matter what you want. The fit is not the fit. So I agree 100%. And it is a little bit,
it's awkward to make that the first question, but you can't speak. I get you can't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
But for you, would you be offended by that question if right out of the gate you said,
absolutely,
"Hey, Josh, I'd like to talk to you tonight. I saw you play." And the first question I had, "Hey, Coach, how much does your school cost if you really like me?"
No, and the thing that I would appreciate about that is it saves me time. We have 2 recruiters for 4 and 5 classes. So my job is to get as much information and background and digging and calls, asking you about certain guys that you gave me feedback about before, doing all this groundwork and getting transcripts and flying all over the country and trying to figure out where all these prospects are so I can continue to follow and watch them and learn more about them and are they a fit. Come to find out, you're saying Tulane is a place you want to come, and then I offer you $40,000 and they say, sorry, I can't afford it. Like for me, I just wasted all that time. So I would much prefer somebody go, hey coach, if I've got to come up with more than $20,000, I'm out. Thank you. I wanted to play, like I said, I wanted to play for the Dodgers, but they didn't draft me. So I wouldn't be offended by that at all. Matter of fact, as I've been doing this a little bit more, and I was given some suggestions about this job, and saying, hey, find out if they can afford it. If they can't, move on. And it's really true, because you don't want to keep spinning your wheels.
Well, it's good for the player and the
relationship, and then all of a sudden, I can't.
It's good for them too.
Yeah,
it's good for them too to get that out of the way.
Yes.
When dealing with recruits or families, what are some of the misconceptions that you really had to go in and explain to them about how the money works and what it's for?
Okay, good. That's a great question, and I'll piggyback off kind of the last answer, which was with regards to wanting to know right away if somebody can afford our institution. And I said the answer to that is yes. That saves time. But I also think that same question being answered needs to be careful when it comes to what are your options and who's recruiting you. And what I mean by that is I think everybody goes into this thing with the hope that they're going to get all their school paid for, or it's going to be some big pot of money at the end of the rainbow. And when you're dealing with 11.7 and 27 people maximum allowed on scholarship, you're talking a lot of slices of the pie. So I think when you go into these meetings, and I speak for myself, you develop these relationships and you follow these kids around, and you tell them how much you really want them to be a part of the program. And then you tell them that they're going to have to come up with a lot of money. Let's say you offer $20,000, they got to come up with 30 or 20 or 25. Any amount of money is a lot of money, regardless. So everybody's trying to get as much as they can. We're certainly trying to limit the amount that we're passing out, because we understand the 11.7 and how that pie needs to be sliced. So I think that sticker shock really hits people kind of right away. So I think that misconception could possibly be out there, or like I said, it could be they understand that, but the hope is it's not going to be them that's going to be offered a third of the slice of the pie. They're going to be getting the big slice of the pie. So I think those things need to be understood. I think the great families that I've dealt with do have an understanding of that, and they understand that their son could be a Friday night starter, but if they don't have a good catcher to throw to that can steal strikes, or a shortstop that can pick it up and throw it across, or the big bopper on the corner that can hit a 3-run homer to bail their son out of giving up a couple runs or 5 runs or what have you, that team effort not only exists on the field, but it also exists financially. And that's hard to sell people on when you're talking about pocketbooks. But I think at the end of the day, the really good ones really grasp that. And I think you kind of know that right away when you're recruiting, which families kind of have a sense of how this is really going to go versus the families that don't have a real sense and kind of flying blind, so to speak.
Can you tell when a family is asking for more money just to ask for it versus they really need it?
I'd like to tell you yes. I guess I'm kind of more on the side of believing, I believe in people, but I also have done this long enough to know where these kind of things lead. So my guard is up. So I try to go into this knowing that people are going to, they're going to try to get the most they can get. And we want to help, gosh, I wish we could hand out 25 full tuitions to guys, or 27 full tuitions. That would be awesome. So I certainly don't begrudge families for asking for more money, because the worst we can say is no, and here's kind of.
But does that put a bad taste in your mouth if a family does ask for more money?
it depends on how much I'm offering.
Okay.
If I offer a good scholarship and it's, you know, it's 50 to 70% and it's, hey, we need more. Sometimes it can rub me the wrong way, but again, I try to go back to putting myself in these people's shoes, and you know, I don't know what their situations are. The one thing I don't like that I think is irrelevant, because I don't have any control over it, is when families go to, well, I've got 2 kids in college and one behind this one, and I just, you know, the sarcastic person in me wants to say, well, how about the private school you just sent all 4 of those kids through that cost $25,000 a year? And I see you at every event staying in the same Marriott hotels that I'm in, and you're paying all this money to do all these things. Like, I get it, but like, my job is not to pay you back for that. You know, my job is to fit your son, his needs, and our program's needs together, not to pay you back. So yeah, it can rub you wrong, but I do try to keep a little bit of that off to the side, and just remember that someday I may be going back to that family. And I tell them this straight up in the recruiting process, that someday I may come back to you and say, hey, I've got a little issue. I've got to start moving the shelves around. I need some money. Can I borrow some money this year and pay you back a year from now or 2 years from now? Or can I pay you all this year and take you off the books for the next 2 years? So there is some give and take in that. It can't be what's good for the goose is good for the gander kind of thing. It's got to be a situation where you got to kind of swallow and check that ego at the door when they do come back and say, hey, can you give $5,000 more? If you can do that, we're good. But what I don't want to do is say, hey, here's an extra 5, and now they come back and say, can you give me another 2? It's not a card negotiation. I'm not going back to the boss and getting squeezed for more juice, if that makes sense. So
no, 100%. And there's a fine line there, but you know, because you are trying to balance a lot of families, and trying to make it happen for the families who need it. But I think just like anything in life, you do have a few bad apples out there who kind of ruin it, and then, like you said, put you on your guard when maybe you know you shouldn't be. I've seen a lot, heard a lot of the stories where a family agrees to, this is the scholarship that we're going to give your son, and that happens early in the process these days, sophomore year. Come signing day, that scholarship looks different, or all of a sudden the money's gone, or the NLI says a walk-on spot. One, why is that allowed to happen? And 2, what would be a reason for taking a kid's money away?
Okay, let me try to get to, there was a few angles in that question. So the first thing is, in terms of, I offer player A a scholarship. By the time he shows up and signs his NLI, that's different because the cost of tuition continues to rise. Now, if I set that, there's 2 ways to do it. You can put in an NLI. There's a lot of wording you can use, but the 2 basic ones are percentage based and then dollar value based. So when you put percentage base in an NLI in a financial aid agreement, it doesn't matter if the cost of tuition or attendance goes up, that percentage will be reflective of that inflation. When you give a dollar value, it is a straight up dollar value and does not account for inflation. So the reason why that ends up happening is because you're talking about a dollar value. So for me, again, I'm trying to squeeze the lemon, you're trying to squeeze the lemon. I can't guarantee that tuition is going to go up. I can make a safe assumption that it's going to.
That was going to be my other question. I know we're going back and forth like crazy, okay, but again, you're so valuable with what you're providing right now. And I'm trying not to miss any point.
That's okay.
Do coaches understand and anticipate and know when that inflation is going to happen, and they say, oh, well, we're better off giving the dollar amount versus the percentage?
Boy, I don't think we're that good. I don't think we know how much. I mean, I speak for myself. I don't think we know how much it's going to go up. I think we can kind of take the trajectory of where it was and where it's gone, and figure out kind of basic. But I would tell you that the difference between a dollar value and a percentage value over the course of each year is going to be anywhere from 1% to 2% that I can get back.
Right. We're not talking about signing a 7-year-old, and that's going to be much different,
That's right. And I think here's what I would say is your responsibility as someone that's kind of going through this and getting recruited and being offered is to understand that when you're being offered a dollar value, that you're being offered a dollar value, and you're going to expect that whatever inflation occurs is going to be something that you're going to have to account for within your budget. If somebody's saying, hey, I'm going to give you 75%, I don't even know if anybody does that much anymore. They may. A lot of times it's full, you say if you're giving out full tuition fees and books, full tuition fees and books is pretty much a set percentage, because again, it's accounting for the inflation of full tuition, full fees, and full books as it moves up every single year. So if, let's say, the cost of full tuition fees and books is $40,000, and I say, okay, I'm going to pay you $38,000 to go to school, there's a $2,000 difference. So when that goes up to $42,000 cost of attendance after your freshman year, well, you can assume that there's an extra $2,000 you're going to have to pay for. Now, the thing that I think families have the hardest time with is year one financially, because it is so overwhelming. You're talking about moving, you're talking about paying. How do I pay? How does it look? You have no basic background on how it is to pay per semester or pay per quarter. You're having to pay, in a lot of cases, difference at Tulane is it's a year in residency. So you're paying for on-campus housing, which is significantly more expensive than when you move off campus with 4 or 5 teammates. And now your expenses for housing went from, let's call it $15,000 for the year to $7,000 for the year in year 2. So what you see in year 1 is this big financial package that you're going to be owing, but where you're going to get some relief is in years 2 and 3, when you come and you go off campus and you're not living on campus, and it's a lot cheaper to live off a campus. So like for me, to me, you take room and board and you throw it out the window. Just my personal opinion. I think you go in as a baseball student athlete and go, I'm going to have to pay to live. I'm going to have to pay to feed myself out. Now, when I was doing this thing as a player, we didn't have nutrition. We got like a Blimpie sub sandwich if we were lucky, and $20 a day, like during the season. These guys get full nutrition bars, full nutrition meals. They get occasional snacks now, anything you can hold in your hand. Well, that's a Subway sandwich, a bowl of rice. I mean, there's so many things that can include. You're talking about post-game meals and per diem. So there's so many ways to skin that cat, that when you're done with that in year 1, like I said, your biggest thing that you need to understand is, what am I going to pay for school? Not what am I paying for off camp or living, because you're going to pay for that as a baseball student athlete. Football, no. Basketball, no. Volleyball, no.
Right.
But you're going to pay for that in baseball. So what is my cost for my tuition, my fees, my books? Those kind of things are the things I think that are most important and why things change.
Okay, so going back now, under what scenarios would a team take money away from that initial offer that maybe was granted or agreed upon as a sophomore, and now come the day to sign, it looks different? Like, why would that change?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I think where it could change, hopefully as a recruiter, and again, I'm going to go back to the relationship part of this. A lot of this stuff is going to be based on how you've done your job up until this point, to be able to mitigate any kind of feelings of, hey, I'm getting screwed here. Hey, this isn't what we talked about. So again, going back to the relationships and open communication, those kind of things are very, very, from where I sit and what I do, are very important. But reasons it could look different, oversigned, which everybody does. It's summer league. Ask college summer leagues. I mean, it's a way that you have to be able to do it to survive. It's just a matter of fact of what goes on. So could be oversigned. Guys don't sign in the draft. You ran out of money. So those are kind of some of the factors that could play a part into that. Why some people could end up getting to signing day or 6 months before signing day or 2 weeks or a year, and all of a sudden the school that you've agreed with about, okay, this is what we're going to do for you, suddenly goes, we're out. Sorry. We're going to have to move in a different direction. It's business. You understand, right? Those things can be as simple as the student athlete didn't live up to his end of the bargain. The guy recruiting you put himself in a bad situation by getting stretched way too thin, and the landscape of things are changing. So there's so many things that could end up playing a part in why things change when they get there.
What does it mean? What does it mean when you say they don't live up to their end of the bargain, performance-wise?
Some of that, yes. And here's what I would tell you. Now, once they sign the NLI and they're on a scholarship and they're at the institution, you can't take financial aid away based on performance. That's in the rule book, flat out, period.
Now, I'm sorry, again, there's so much here. Is that once they sign, like, is the NLI a binding contract, or
yes,
you're talking about once they get on campus?
Yeah, no, it's the NLI. I was talking about why things may change up until the point you sign the NLI.
Okay.
But once you sign the NLI and you get your you get to campus and you're with the team, you cannot take the financial aid agreement. You can't remove the financial aid agreement. Let's say you hit 190 as a freshman and you're sitting in your year-end meetings and coach says, well, you hit 190. Sorry, you're no good. See you later. We're taking your money. You can't do that. That's illegal. But everybody wants to play. Okay. So nobody wants to sit on the bench. Nobody wants to share. Everybody wants to play. So I think oftentimes what ends up happening is you have these conversations at the end of the year and say, hey, how was school? How's your family? How's your financial situation? Okay, let's talk about moving forward. Here's where we see you. We've got these guys coming in. We've got these guys coming back. You played sparingly as a freshman. You missed workouts. You failed this class. You violated team rules. That would be a way to lose your scholarship for sure. Violating team rules, academics, those kind of things that are explicitly stated in team rules. You kind of go over the scenario of, hey, this is your year. It's an exit interview. What do you want to do? I don't see you playing a whole lot next year. I don't have a crystal ball, but this is the situation that you need to know going into it, that there's a chance that you're not going to play a lot. If you want to seek other options, we're happy to help you. If you want to stay, you're certainly more than welcome, but know how this is going to potentially play out for you. Do you want to sit the bench again? Moving on into year two and into, getting closer to your draft year. So those kind of conversations, however uncomfortable they are, those things really happen. So at the end of the day, you can't explicitly say, hey, you hit 190 or your ERA was 9, we're taking your money away from you. That can't happen. That's illegal.
In what you described, is that what offloading a scholarship means?
It can. I mean, yeah, it can be. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And when you talk about building a scholarship offer, is there some sort of rule to the structure of that offer, or can they be front loaded, back loaded? Can they increase, decrease?
Yep.
How do those look? Are there different ways to structure them?
There are, and it's tricky because you're not allowed to decrease. You can increase whenever you want. Okay, increasing is well within the rules and plenty good. That takes nothing special to do. You can always give somebody more money or put somebody on money. You cannot decrease unless you provide $1 more scholarship in future years. Okay, so I can restructure a deal. Say I've got a kid on. Now this happened in the Pac-12. Now I don't. They've changed since then, but it used to be a 4-year guaranteed scholarship, where you had to put a dollar figure in the first year and a dollar figure in the last year. In the middle years, you could have zero. In those second and third year, you can have zeros, because you're offering money is still in that last year. That made it valid. So what I'm only speaking for myself. What I would do is have those conversations with families ahead of time, saying, yes, it's a 4-year guarantee, but this is what we have to do, and these are the reasons we have to do it. We've got to create roster flexibility. We've got to be able to account for the draft and guys that don't sign, including you. If you sign a contract with the Padres and you leave us, we've got to be able to account for these kind of things. So you need the roster flexibility. And here's what I want to be able to do is, because when the re-ups for the scholarships come, once they're in writing and once that re-up comes in July, you can't decrease that money. So if I've got a situation, somebody's got to go. So I want to be able to create a situation where I've got the ability to be able to get creative and say, okay, can you absorb $20,000 less in this year, but I'll give that back to you your junior year, or I'll give it back to you your senior year. So it allows you to put yourself where you're not necessarily taking money from them. You're still giving them the money that you agreed upon, but you're able to move that total amount, dollar value, over the 4 years into other kinds of years. So it was all very confusing, which is why ultimately they pretty much did away with it. But
right.
Here's the kicker, is I always went with if I made a habit of signing you to this kind of contract and then cutting you in year 2, don't you think that rumor is going to get out there and I'm not going to be able to get players based on how I treated you? So I always went to the card of, I'm developing this relationship. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not putting our program or myself in harm's way to do things in a way that would shed a negative light on the program, and then not allow me to get more players because, that school, they'll sign you to this, tell you this, and then they don't give you your money. So the intention was always to give the money back, and that happened. There were occasions people left the program, but fortunately for us, we never had any complaints while I was at Oregon in terms of how we operated. So
Right.
There are ways to get creative. There are ways to backload. There are ways to, for instance, let's say a guy's on 25% for 4 years. So we're going to give you, it's a 1-year contract, by the way. So after year 1, you're going to be on another 25%. Year 2's over, you're on 25%. Year 4's over, you're on 25%. So it's a full 1 scholarship over the course of 4 years. You following me? So let's just say we get to the end of the summer, this kid's freshman year, and he's on 25% his freshman year. Somebody signs late, somebody can't get into school, and all of a sudden I have 75% floating around. And I ask that family, I say, hey, I have an extra, I won't even say 75%. I have an extra 50% that I'm willing to give you in year 1 to make your financial aid in year 1 75%. Now, what that's going to mean is I've now paid you your year 2 and your year 3, but I've paid you all in year 1. So understand, when we get to year 2, you're going to have 0 scholarship dollars. Year 3, you're going to have 0 scholarship dollars. But your senior year, we'll have that 25% for you to make sure that 100% is taken care of. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. But I also want to make sure that everybody who's watching understands. I'm guessing parents are going to watch this episode right through. They should. Whether or not it's right or wrong, or teams do it or teams don't do it, it is within the rules to backload a scholarship. And then if the kid doesn't perform in year 1 or 2, you could bury him on the bench and potentially offload that and never have given him any scholarship money.
if he voluntarily leaves the program.
Right, but if a coach buries him on the bench and doesn't give him
Yes.
reps, and I'm not accusing
Yes.
anybody of doing this,
Yes.
but it
And I'm
is
not either.
within the rules
Yes.
to do this.
Yeah, because the scholarship doesn't guarantee, the NLI or the scholarship does not guarantee you playing time.
Right.
So I'll tell it to you like this. We'll have kids. I've had kids over the course of my career that I'm recruiting that I'm trying to get as non-scholarship. And I try to be careful about calling them walk-ons because I don't think that's a good term. They're non-scholarship kids because you need 35 players on your roster. And every kid, regardless of what you're making or not making in terms of scholarship dollars, does not devalue you or make you more valuable than anybody else. It's just the 11-7. It's at times a victim of circumstance. Those kind of things show up. You need players. And a matter of fact, a lot of the best players that I've ever had the privilege of being around oftentimes were the kids that were on no scholarship or the low amounts of, quote, scholarships, than opposed to the kid that's on the donkey ride that he decided that he got to school and maybe he was playing for mom and dad, and maybe he was not playing because he loved the game, and we got fooled and we misread him and we did a bad job in the fact-finding mission, and he ended up having no work ethic, no drive, and basically ate up 80% for 4 years, while these other guys on lower amounts or no amounts were the drivers of the bus, so to speak. So, I think as you go through that and you tell these people that you're trying to get them to come as non-scholarship athletes, you got to understand that I don't have an automatic roster spot for you, which is where I was headed. You'll get asked the question, can you guarantee me a roster spot? And I say, absolutely not. There's no way in heck that I can do that to you. I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't even guarantee that our guys on scholarship are going to have a roster spot or a place to play. If they screw up in class or they do something stupid, or they're not good fits for the program because they put us in a position where they're a disservice to the program, they can have their money for the year, but we're never going to play them the rest of the year. So there's never a situation where you should ever feel entitled or guaranteed to playing a year, being part of a team. Everything is earned. Again, I'll go back to whether it's somebody I'm offering money to or not. When the Giants draft you and you go into the draft, it doesn't matter how many people they have in the organization. They're not going to stop drafting players because they signed you as a shortstop. They're going to continue to draft shortstops. So everybody's obligation is being hungry, being able to function within a team environment, and really work hard every single day to be the best player that you can be in a positive life force. And I think if you do all those things, there's going to be nothing taken away from you. Whereas the entitlement part of that's going to put people in pretty tough positions. So again, I go back to there is no guarantee. It's a 1-year deal. I'm on a 1-year deal. I could be fired tomorrow, so there's no guarantees in this other than for scholarship kids, they're guaranteed their money for a year and a roster spot. Now, if they leave the program or we ask them to leave the program because they're being a negative, you're not recruiting guys to get rid of them. You're recruiting guys because you believe in them. That's the other bottom line to this thing. You're not trying to give people money because you think you're going to cut them or tell them that you're just such a negative force in our program that you're gone. You're not doing that. But if they put in that position and they're on money, they're going to cost you for the year financially, and they're going to cost you for the year of those 27 scholarship roster spots. And you can't even fill in that extra void of a guy leaving your program, whether by his hand or yours. You can't even fill that spot with a walk-on. There's the word. See how it's a negative connotation. With the non-scholarship guy, you can't even fill that guy in. So you might have to cut your 36th guy, even though you've got a spot, because you don't really have a spot, if that makes sense.
If a kid comes on a scholarship and in year 1 they get injured and they can never play baseball again, but they don't want to leave the school, do they get to keep their scholarship?
100%. It's called a medical redshirt. And we would seek that and support that 100%. I don't know a program that wouldn't, and that kid would keep the dollar value of his scholarship until he graduated. He would just never be able to play again. He would have to be deemed basically retired at that point.
Well, that's some good news, at least here.
Absolutely.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. This sounds like a worse structure than anything else in sports that I know of, in terms of, I know they're saying they're not getting paid to play, but in reality, like, what are we talking about here? You know, like, I mean, it's possible to get a kid to buy into a school that's going to cost them $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, backload the scholarship, bench them, see if they can perform, never play them, have them leave, and then be in debt $150,000. Like, I'm not saying teams do that, but that is fully within the realm of possibility.
100%, and no question about that. It's the fact that we're a head count and equivalency, and it's not a full ride type of sport, meaning full grant and aid, meaning full tuition fees, books, full cost of room and board, and then cost of attendance. Because we're not handing those out, because we only get 11.7 of those, it puts recruiting coordinators and head coaches in a very difficult situation to be able to have integrity, to be able to conduct themselves with a high level of integrity, with the best intentions of, be honest, the program first, and the families second, because at the end of the day, we keep our jobs whether we win or we lose. So that's kind of the bottom line for that.
Just kind of going back to something from earlier where we say, well, you know, in order to secure that scholarship, the kid needs to live up to his, you know, his end of the deal. Well, what about the flip side of that? Where do coaches or where do programs need to live up to their end of that agreement?
That to me right there means a lot, because when you make a verbal agreement years out, you know, before they change kind of the recruiting rules, you could get a freshman, you could talk to, as long as they called you, you could kind of negotiate things, and not on paper, but you could get things done. So at that point, when guys were committing so early, I don't think there was a real understanding. I think there was a lot of, hey, this is a finish line. Now, I think as that kind of train moved down the tracks, I think people started to understand their obligations. People meaning, I'll start with the student athlete, the PSAs, the potential student athletes, started to better understand their obligations when it came to, what do I need to do to be able to get where, not the finish line, but to be able to get into where we committed to be able to continue moving the ball forward. Because ultimately, you know, if your path is just, hey, I want to get to X, I don't know at high achieving programs if that's a place you want to be, because I think we all grow up wanting to play professional baseball and become a big leaguer. We don't play wiffle ball in the street or in the driveway trying to be Joe College guy. We're trying to be the guy, the big league guy, you know. So I think as this thing progressed, guys started to understand a little bit more their obligation. And for me, it's simple. When you're looking at a family and you're telling them, okay, here's what we're going to provide, you also need to make sure that they're crystal clear that means not running away and hiding, meaning they're still going to continue to work out and hit and take grounders and throw pens, and they're going to continue to invest in their development, not run and play safe with their scholarship, because you don't get better playing baseball by sitting in front of the computer, in front of the PlayStation, with your phone all day long and playing video games all day long. There's a place for those kind of things, but you get better in baseball by playing and challenging yourselves at the highest level. So my question to potential student athletes is always, do you anticipate getting worse? And their answer 100% is always, what?
Right.
No, I don't plan on getting worse.
Right.
Okay, good. There's, check that box.
Right.
Do you plan on robbing a bank or getting busted for drugs? You know, you get the chuckle, you get the parent looking at the kid saying, if he does, I'll kill him. And And so the answer to that is no. I don't anticipate getting in trouble with the law or doing something stupid that would ruin the reputation of my family, or the school I'm at presently, or where I'm headed. No, I don't plan on that. Okay. So if you don't plan on getting worse, and you don't plan on doing something stupid that way, and do you plan on getting worse grades? Well, of course not. Okay, good. So you've checked all the boxes. Then there's gonna be no problems, and you're gonna come and you're gonna compete. But if any of those things show up that are contrary to what you're saying you're going to hold your end up to the bargain is going to be, then it's our obligation as a coach, recruiting coordinator, steward for the program to say, well, you didn't live up to your obligation. I can't have you come to my institution because there are allegations that you did this, or you went, you got arrested because you did this, or you cheated on this test, or you stopped playing with your travel ball team, or stopped playing summer ball with your high school team, or you stopped showing up to your hitting lessons, or all of a sudden you had all the answers. When those things show up, I have an obligation as a coach, first of all. And then second of all, I always looked at it like I had an obligation as a parent. I have 3 kids. As much as I would dislike to hear the truth, I would rather hear the truth beforehand than after the fact. And what I mean by that is, if I knew that your son got worse, did those kind of things, and put himself in a position where he was not going to be able to function at a high level and compete in our program, I would owe it to you as a co-father to tell you that this isn't going to work out, that he's going to need to seek other options before he signs that national letter of intent and puts us all in a bad spot. Not only for you, but for us, because once he signs the NLI, now he becomes a counter. Now he goes into the 11-7. And now when he leaves our program after a year because he's not playing, or he does something stupid, or he doesn't like to play baseball anymore, and he leaves our program, he now counts against our APR. And now when he leaves our institution with grades that are substandards, he now counts double against our APR. And when we have APR casualties, we now put our program and our coaching staff and our players at risk, because now we're talking about sanctions against the postseason. Now, let me go back to, I owe it to you as a father. If it cost you $70,000 to come to school, and I gave you guys 30, and you said, good, we're in, we'll sign up in November, and your son clearly was displaying things that were not worthy of being where he should be, and I knew this, and I buried my head in the sand, and I allowed you to move him 6,000 miles away. That's going to cost a lot of money to move him. Put him in a dorm, put him with new roommates and teammates, learn a system, go away from home, the cost it's going to take to go back and forth from Thanksgiving and Christmas, all this financial burden on top of the $40,000 or $30,000 you're going to incur just to go to school for the opportunity to get that education and have an opportunity to be a member of the team. You're going to pay all that money, and I'm going to look at you and pretend like that's going to be okay. I would much rather, as a man and a human being, put my head down at night and know I told you the truth and caused you severe pain for 3 months, a year, because now all the gear that you bought, the stickers you put on your car, the people that you told you were coming to our institution, and now you have to tell them why you're not, is a source of embarrassment. I would rather have that source of embarrassment in the short term than the long term's effect of $40,000 and moving, and you're still going to deal with the same embarrassment of moving. However, the one difference is you can then again blame the coaching staff, the institution, or those kind of things. So I would rather have it on the front end as a man than on the back end. And I might not like it, and I'm probably not going to like it because of all the things you told me this, you told me that, we agreed to this, we stopped being recruited because we said we were going to come to school X. All of those things are true, but at the end of the day, I'm doing that for the best interest of the school and in what I believe is in the best interest of the family, bottom line. Now, if I'm signing 30-man classes every year and I'm just taking the best 10 guys and cutting 20 guys, I can't speak to that because I can honestly tell you that that's not a way that that I operate when I deal with people that I recruit.
And 99.9% of the coaches out there don't operate that way. But
that's correct.
But I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that 100% of them don't, just like I wouldn't say in anything in life that 100% of people, everybody's this way.
No doubt.
And as a teacher, I used to talk about all the time. We'd say, well, how's your third period or how's your fourth period class? Right? And which one's the good class or which one's the bad class? You can have 30 great kids in a class, but if you have 2 bad kids, then you think of the whole class as, oh, that class sucks, you know? And it's kind of like recruiting, where you hear the horror stories and you think that's just how it is. And it's really not. And look, the information that you provided, Coach Uhlman, is unbelievable. I know it's something that people have never sat down and got a chance to hear from a coach like yourself, and it's going to help a lot of people. And thank you so much for having this conversation that a lot of people are really hesitant to have. But it's good for the game. It's good for kids. It's good for everybody. So thank you so much.
Welcome. For that. I appreciate having us all on here. I know it's a long laundry list of guys that have done this before I've had the opportunity to do it. And obviously I saw the lineup you've got here shaken out in the next 9 or so days. Very impressive, very cool. I think a lot of valuable things to be learned, at least just to be heard, maybe not learned, but certainly heard. So thank you. I appreciate you extending the invitation for me to be on. So appreciate it.
You can only bring the horse to water, right?
That's right.
See you later, Coach. Have a good one.
See you. Thank you.